Far out in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy lies a small, unregarded yellow sun. Orbiting this at a distance of roughly 92 million miles is an utterly insignificant little blue-green planet whose ape-descended lifeforms are so amazingly primitive that two of them still think doing a podcast called Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea is a pretty neat idea. These podcasters have, or rather had, a problem, which was this. Actually, this is the solution. Hey, Brian, what's this?
Well, Jeff, this is our review of the second issue of the IDW comic book series, which is the second story in the Dirk Gently Holistic Detective Agency. This story is titled A Spoon Too Short.
Yes.
And based on the cover, I'm going to say that it's not going to be quite as salacious and titillating as the last issue.
No, it won't be. Because he is riding an elephant, it seems, in the savannah of Africa.
That's correct.
And there's giraffes behind him and a rhinoceros, a couple of monkeys.
An interesting little tidbit on the cover as well. It says, coming soon to television.
Yes, and on that note, I did look up a couple of things, and the writer we called David, but I think it's more likely that his name is pronounced David, because he is of Asian descent and he lives in Britain, and he was an executive producer of the TV show. So,
interesting.
I don't know, I've never heard his name spoken, but I would lean toward David.
Okay, great. And he's one of the three characters that are on the cover of this magazine. And I would have, like you, I thought when I looked at the last cover, I thought it was the first and last name.
Right.
Interesting. And of course, he's sitting astride an elephant, as you say, but seems quite comfortable drinking a cup of tea.
And has a cat on his lap.
Yes.
All right, so we'll jump right in and look at the previously on page. In the last issue, the main story was about a family who all of a sudden lost the means to communicate.
Yes, the Kingdom Browns.
The Kingdom Browns, correct. And that, Dirk says, is what separates us from the animals. He's talking to Sally Mills, who was going to a Halloween costume dressed as the stereotypical sexy nurse. And he also met a woman named Tamasha Ng Travers, and she is telling him that he needs to come with her to Kenya to meet the tribe without words.
And of course, the three images on this page are strung together with a string like they do on those evidence or murder boards, as they say.
Correct. The page after that, again, is talking about our cast of characters. So we have Dirk Gently, Sally Mills, the Kingdom Browns, Tamasha Ng Travers, Madluck Biggin. He is a conservationist and he is heroic. And we have Sid, an endangered black rhino, and of course, Bernice, Schrodinger's cat.
Of course.
And the picture of Bernice is the pose that you get, I think, from every cat looking at and trying to figure out exactly what the human is doing.
Oddly perplexed as the cat is.
Yes. So we will go to page 1 of the story. Like the last issue, this issue starts out in the old comic book style. And it's gone back 30 years. And it says it's the smarter side of Transylvania, where Dirk spent his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And he's having some sort of weird dream again where he's on, what kind of staircase would you call that?
Winding staircase?
Winding staircase, that's it. But not a winding staircase like you would see in any kind of a house.
Or
kind of a winding...
Escher-esque, yeah.
Yes, the winding staircase that Escher would draw.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be all alone, crawling, and he's calling for his mom, and he's calling for his dad, and it's really weird because sometimes the words are upside down. He is always upside down in these pictures, but I'm not sure if he's going up the stairs or down the stairs.
Right. Quite confusing. What is interesting, though, is that they introduced the television show on the cover.
Yes.
But here in this flashback, they're talking about Transylvania, which is from the books, not the TV show. At least I don't recall any reference to his ancestry in the TV show.
No, he was referred to as Slad once.
That's correct. He was. You're right.
So they did call to it, but they did not expand on it at all.
And here we see a castle on the hill with vampire bats.
Yes.
Well, we have to assume they're vampire bats, right?
Right. It's Transylvania.
Yeah, of course.
And then around the staircase, we've got rats, and there seems to be suits of armor. So he's obviously inside the castle. So let's see what happens on the second page. So it appears that Dirk got to the top of the staircase or the bottom of the staircase, wherever he was going, and he opened what appears to be a bedroom door, and all the bats squeak, 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 and fly out. And looking at their fangs, they're clearly vampire bats. And Dirk laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs and calls one of them Papa. And the bed in the background is one of those canopy beds covered in pink chiffon.
Yes, exactly. And sprawled across the bottom is the title of this chapter, The Tribe with No Words.
Yes. So we'll go to page 3. The dream that Dirk was having was while he was asleep on the plane to Kenya with Tamasha. And you can hear him muttering Mama and Papa. And he's talking basically that he doesn't have any real memories of his parents, doesn't remember his father at all, and his mother sent him away when he was young. But then he has a dilemma with the food service on the plane, and he calls for the waitress rather than the stewardess. Now we know the reason for the title of this issue. And Brian, what's happening?
Well, Dirk is quite frustrated because the spoon that seems to have been provided with his yogurt is quite tiny.
Yes.
Which doesn't allow him to reach all the way down to the bottom of his yogurt. And that is the information with which he is accosting the stewardess.
Yes. His spoon is too short.
Oh my gosh.
We'll move to page 4. The stewardess was none too happy to have him accost her about his yogurt, and he is being dragged off to be reprimanded.
Dragged by the tie.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. The stewardess, dragging him by the collar, throws him into the back room and looks him straight in the eye and says, "Let me teach you a little something about naming and function, Mr. Gently."
And he asks, "How do you know my name? Are you a clue?"
She says, "It's on the passenger manifest, you ridiculous man, and I'm not a clue, any more than I am a waitress. Call me one again, and I'll cut your heart out with a spoon. Do we understand each other?" she says.
And Dirk says he comforted himself with the thought that anyone who would quote Alan Rickman couldn't be all evil. Which is kind of weird because
yeah.
the quote is from the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves where he was yelling he will cut somebody's heart out with a spoon, which is pretty much as evil as you can get.
Yeah, that's a deep dive.
Yes, it is. On to page 5.
Okay. I think that's all we have to say about page 5.
Yeah.
Oh.
On this page, we are introduced to Sid the Rhinoceros.
Mm-hmm.
However, he tends to be more Marvin-like in his thoughts.
They're certainly circular.
Yes, they are. So there's a couple of birds perched on him, and we get to see close-ups of his nose and his eye and his horn, and he's eating grass. And he's deciding that it's warm today, and the grass is nice, and it's nicer than the grass yesterday, but perhaps not as good as tomorrow, though who's to say?
At least he's got all 4 legs. He's not
Right.
trudging around in a circle.
Yes. And it's kind of funny when you think of it this way, because I, without really even thinking about it, just by the dialogue, compared him to Marvin.
Yes, exactly.
And in the movie, who played Marvin?
Alan Rickman.
Yes, he did. So we'll go on to page 6. So we see the rhinoceros on the plain still, and he's still eating grass, and he's thinking that he hasn't seen Fred for a while, or Sally, or Joe for that matter. Never liked them that much anyway, but still wonder where they went.
Well, clearly, as you said earlier, we're supposed to be hearing the voice of Alan Rickman in our head.
Yes.
And down on the last 2 panels of the page, you can see what appears to be laser sights that are pointed at our poor fellow Sid's head.
Yes. And it goes clack, clack, clack.
And he mutters to himself, oh, well, that solves one mystery.
Yes. And then it's lights out. So we'll hope they're tranquilizers.
Oh, yes, we will.
So page 7. We now get to meet Dr. Madluck. And he and his group have come across Sid. And unfortunately, they do not appear to have been tranquilizer darts.
No, they do not.
So it seems he and his crew are very upset because the poachers who have stolen the horn are now using armor-piercing shells to take down these rhinoceri. And I found it a little bit funny in looking at this page the first time, not knowing what everything was. So the upper left-hand panel is kind of a far shot with a silhouette of Sid dead on the ground.
Right.
And then they show Dr. Madluck next to him.
Right.
And then underneath that, Dr. Madluck is checking the ear tag on Sid to find out which rhinoceros was killed. But to the left, there's one of his assistants. And the upper panel of Sid laying on the ground looks like a hat sitting on the top of the assistant.
Yes, it does. That is a little odd.
So I don't know if that was
placement there.
intentional. Yes.
And on the bottom right panel, we see Dr. Madluck examining the bullet, and over his shoulder, he hears the words, "Hello, Dr. Madluck, I presume?"
So we will go on to page 8. So on this page, where the overarching theme of all of Dirk Gently is everything is connected, and that is said over and over and over, everything on this page seems to be disconnected.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So in the top panel, they're in a car driving, and Dirk looks like Lawrence of Arabia.
He does.
And Tamasha says, tell me again what this Dr. Madluck has to do with the tribe or your tourists.
And Dirk says, everything is connected.
And she says, so you keep saying.
Nevertheless, he says.
And she says, Madluck? Is that really his name? Doesn't look very pleased to see us. And then there's a box next to it that says, that may also be connected.
Right, and what makes this confusing, as you say, is that scene takes place as Tamasha is driving the car up to where the Rangers are.
Yes.
He's standing and she's still driving at that moment, so
right.
We don't appear to have any connection to the previous page.
No, so Tamasha recruited Dirk to go with her to see the Tribe Without Words.
Mm-hmm.
And Dirk is taking her to see Dr. Madluck, and we have no idea how he discovered Dr. Madluck or what any of that is. We may get an answer on another page, but that's not the only issue that we seem to have with connectivity.
Right.
Second panel is Dirk is getting out of the convertible, and he is looking at Dr. Madluck and walking towards him from the car, which is quite some distance away, which means who said Dr. Madluck, I presume.
Right. And when did they say it?
Yes. And so then Dirk walks up and wants to shake his hand and introduce himself.
And Dr. Madluck told him to stop.
Yes. And Tamasha seems a little bit confused as to everything that's happening here.
And another thing I think is quite odd is they're driving a convertible, what looks like a very racy kind of sports car.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, how impractical in the middle of Kenya's deserts.
Yes.
Not the kind of conveyance I would imagine that would be convenient.
Correct. Jeep maybe would have been a better option. So on to page 9. So we've come to the page in this issue, which is the, I want to say friendly banter, but it's not friendly.
No, it is not.
But it is banter.
Yes, it is.
So it's between Madluck and Dirk, and I guess we're just going to do our best to read it in the way it's written because it's hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll try and do it without laughing, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think so.
So Madluck has grabbed Dirk by the collar and pulled him close right up to him, and he says, "Take it off."
And Dirk responds, "I'm sorry?"
"So you should be, but that's not good enough. Take it off."
The outfit? It's an homage. Tom Lawrence and all that. Also, it's terrifically comfortable, and in this heat, the tweed suit wasn't quite cutting it.
First, I've had enough casual cultural appropriation by every whitey that turns up in my park.
Whitey? Dr. Madluck, I need...
Secondly, it's not even the right culture. We're in sub-Saharan Africa, you puffy-haired buffoon, not the Arabian Peninsula.
Puffy?
Thirdly, Lawrence at least earned the right. He lived amongst the Bedouin for years. He spoke their language. He took the Arab boy Dahum as his lover. Tell me, Puffy, are you and I going to be lovers?
I am not your white puffy lover. I am Dirk Gently, holistic detective.
Good, because let me tell you, Mr. Dirk Detective, if we were to make love, it would break your bones. Your pelvis would be ground glass, your hair would fall out. Now, if you want to talk to me, change your clothes. Also, introduce me to your friend over there.
And she is looking like a quite attractive young lady, isn't she?
Yes, as she lifts up her sunglasses to get a better look herself.
Mm-hmm. And Madluck is a handsome man.
Yes. On to page 10. And so this is actually a beautiful double-page spread.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The savannah stretches out across the double page on the top, and there's 7 panels on the bottom. And I think what's funny on this top panel of the page, there's meerkats and warthogs and giraffe. And oddly enough, the warthog looks like Pumbaa.
Yep.
And then there's a cluster of meerkats all sitting up on one of those rocks that happens to be thrusting out into the savannah.
Yes. Looks like the perfect spot to hoist a baby lion cub over your head.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And on the bottom, it is all the discussion that Dr. Matlock and Tamasha and Dirk are having. And basically, Dirk and Tamasha are trying to get information about the tourists who lost their voice. And Dr. Matlock wants nothing to do with that because he doesn't have time for human problems. He only deals with animals. And all of his attention has turned toward Tamasha.
So throughout these panels, of course, Matlock has his attention on Tamasha the entire time. And Dirk sort of keeps interrupting. A couple of times during the interruptions, Tamasha gets upset with Dirk and kicks him in the shin.
Yes.
When Dirk realizes that Matlock's only attention is going to be on animals, he says, well, I have a cat.
Right. So then Matlock decides that he's going to invite Tamasha to go with him to the tribal grounds of the Inkawa, and hopefully that would serve her purpose to meet possibly the tribe without words. And Dirk decides that he's just going to let them go and eat, but they call for him. So then on to page 12. So this is just a beautifully drawn page, again, looking at the African savanna, and we have large birds flying and giraffes and gazelles and beautiful sunset. And the conversation is basically Tamasha explaining to Dr. Matlock that Dirk has his own way of working and discounts the Sherlock Holmes because Sherlock Holmes wants to eliminate the impossible, and Dirk does not want to eliminate the impossible.
Right, correct.
And has an intuition that the poaching and the tribe without words are connected.
Correct.
So we'll go to page 13. On this page, I'm going to say this is a depiction of the adage, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yeah, that's about it. That's very good. Because, of course, what we're looking at here on these panels is we are back at the Woods Head Hospital, and Sally Mills is wandering down the corridor with her clipboard, checking in on things, and suddenly she hears music.
Right.
And it sounds connected, and she walks up to the window we've seen before where the Kingdom Browns are living.
Right, but it's dark, so the lights are off and you can't see inside.
That's correct. So she opens the door slowly and clicks on the light, and as she looks down, she sees the family of four. They're lying in bed, and there's little blank word bubbles above their heads, and she says, yes. What's going on here?
And they're all asleep.
They're all asleep. She slowly turns off the light, closes the door, and as soon as she walks away, once again, she hears music coming from inside.
Weird.
So I think you nailed it.
Yeah. So page 14. This page brings us to the Nkawa tribal village in Kenya, which is the home of the tribe without words. And the place is a dump.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Old buildings and just stuff on the street. But I'm sure it's very typical of a village in Kenya out in the middle of the savannah because spackle isn't readily available around the corner there like it is here.
No Walmart there.
No. And I haven't exactly figured out what sparked it, but it starts out as a quiet, peaceful night, and then all of a sudden you hear no words coming out of the houses, and then the people have come out of the houses and are shouting more no words.
Must have been an interesting concept. I imagine going up to an art director and saying, I really want to produce a comic book where everyone says nothing.
Yes. So page 15.
Maybe it's reminiscent of one of your favorite shows. The show about nothing, Seinfeld.
The show about, yes. So as the people come out of the house, all of a sudden, one of the older gentlemen, music starts coming out of him. He starts humming a tune or something, and then the entire tribe starts singing. And Brian, you recognize the lyrics, so
right.
What is it that they're singing?
They're singing the song, "Brother, Can You Spare Me a Dime?" Once I lived a life of a millionaire, spending my money, I didn't care. I carried my friends out for a good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne, and wine. Then I began to fall so low, I didn't have a friend and no place to go. So if I ever got my hand on $1 again, I'm gonna hold on to it till that old eagle grins.
Nobody knows you when you're down and out.
Yep.
And then it says, you want to understand rhino poaching? Okay, here we go. Page 16. So here is another beautiful double-page spread, and this one is quite a puzzle.
Okay, I'll let you get away with that as wordplay, but you're coming very close to using a pun there, my sir.
And no way, shape, or form is a pun.
Okay.
Every panel is shaped like a puzzle piece, and it is explaining how rhino poaching came to be.
Right. So in our previous pages, we've been told basically by that song that poverty and the need for money is the motivation. And
Yes.
Here we find out how that translates into African savanna.
Right. So the widespread reporting by the Western media on the rhino horn curing cancer, being an aphrodisiac, and all kinds of other things has made the market for it increase. Terrorists even want to diversify, so they get out of oil investments and other stuff, and they invest in ivory and rhino horn. And it says, in Nigeria, Boko Haram needs to find some way to fund its endlessly growing commune of kidnapped girls. So the sale of rhino horn is not helping anybody in the African savanna. It is funding the terrorists to fund other illegal activities.
Correct.
Pretty sad.
It is.
So page 18. So Dr. Matlock is telling Tamasha that everything is connected. And Dirk is all upset because he's like, it's okay when he says it. And Dr. Matlock then comes up to him and says, maybe you are the right sort of detective for Africa. Because this is not a continent where one can afford to eliminate the impossible. And then Tamasha sees something with her binoculars, says it's amazing. What do you think it is?
I don't know.
We will find out on page 19.
It's our elephant friends.
So evidently Tamasha was looking at a herd of elephants, and it's been in this area for generations. And Tamasha was wondering or surmising if only they could tell us what happened to the tribe when they lost their voices.
And then Dirk says, Tamasha, that is brilliant assisting. Wait here. And he slaps his head and seems to run away from Dr. Madlock and Tamasha.
towards the elephants, I guess, to ask them what happened.
That's what it appears to have happened.
Page 20. Dr. Matlock has to cover his eyes because he can't watch what's about to happen. And Tamasha can't miss what's going to happen. So she's got the binoculars trained right on there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Matlock wants to know what the puffy white fool is doing.
And Tamasha says he's asking for an autograph. As Dirk is handing his pen over to an elephant.
Yes.
Who grabs it by his trunk.
Yes.
Dirk holds up the paper, and we see the trunk swirling around a bit.
Scribbling something on the paper.
Mm-hmm. Dirk says, "Thanks, you guys. You're the best, Mama M."
And Tamasha and Dr. Matlock are looking at each other in confusion.
Why not? I would be.
Yes.
Oh, and finally, on the bottom right-hand part of the page, Dirk looks at his tablet and slaps the front of it and says, "Solved it."
Right. With 3 issues to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. In the bottom it says, "Next time on Dirk Gently, poached like a salmon."
All right. So I wonder what the elephant could have possibly scribbled on a piece of paper that is going to connect the tribe humming a tune to get their words back to sing a song. I wonder if the Kingdom Brown family could sing all of their words.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've tried yet.
No, I don't believe they have.
Maybe we will find out in issue 3.
Is that right, Jeff? So, this issue being over, what's next?
I'm going to say issue 3 of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, A Spoon Too Short.
That's great.
So, now that we know what's happening next time, I'm going to say this is the end. Thank you for listening to this. A new episode is released on the first Thursday of every month. A special thank you goes out to Luke, Max, Greg, and Tim Lesnick for arranging and performing our opening theme. Visit our website at digitalwatchesareaprettyneatidea.buzzsprout.com. While there, you can find links to all of my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy inspired t-shirt designs. You can contact us via email at digitalwatchespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Digital Watches Are a Pretty Neat Idea. You can message us on Twitter, or should I say X, at Watches Idea. And our Instagram is Watches Idea Podcast.
This has been a Froods for Thought production.